welcome to Pain and Pride Quarterly Slush Pile. Thank you for tuning in. We're here to share with you some poems that have been submitted to us and our editorial policy, which is a democratic one. The way we're going to handle this poem is how we handle everything that is submitted to PBQ. We do ask our poets for secondary permission before we discuss it on the show. And let's just start getting to it by introducing who's here today. So I'm here, and by here I mean my third floor space. So I like to use a virtual background, you guys, because if I don't, I look like my head's crooked or like I'm defying the law of gravity. Watch. Let me show you what happened.
I want to see. Oh my God. No, you should go to your fantastic walk-in closet. You should go to your amazing walk-in closet.
My students and I are talking about giving each other tours of our rooms. So I'm on a third floor, which means I have a dormered wall, which means it looks like I am sitting sideways or something. So I think it's less confusing to have a virtual background in the back. So anyway, we can all talk about our virtual backgrounds instead of our physical spaces, since our physical spaces are remaining the same. Loyal slushies will know that I love when something new is happening, when we have a new guest or we're in a new space or something like that. And today we have a combination of old and new, in that we have one of our wonderful and very long-term editors, Alex Tunney, joining us on the podcast for the very first time. Hello, Alex.
Hello. How are you all?
Good, I'm good. Tell us about you.
I thought went to St. Rose for undergrad, went to New School for MFA, reader, writer.
How long do you think you've been with us? I think it's been about 112 years, or
I want to say 2013. It was like right after grad school. Jason bred at New School. Oh no, it was before then. I interned.
It was before. You were an intern when you were still at St. Rose, when you were an undergraduate.
It was like 2008 or something.
Yeah.
That's a throwback. That's
what I'm saying. 118 years
110 years, yes. Since not since the 20th century, but pretty close.
You've been here for a century.
Yeah.
Well, so happy to have you join us on the show today. Maybe we'll stay in New York and hear about Jason.
Hi, I'm in Brooklyn. I'm trying to change my background to a Hilma off Klint in honor of today's poem, but I'm not.
Oh yeah, that's a good call.
But no, I'm in New York. I'm in Brooklyn, and I've learned that it's very important to leave the house every day, because if I don't, I get agoraphobia. Actually, yeah, I didn't leave the house for not that long. It was just like a day. I didn't go out because we had enough groceries, we had enough this, we had enough that, and then the next day I went outside. I was like, oh. So I've learned it's really important to spend a little street time, every day. But yeah, I am in Brooklyn, and like everyone else, I'm doing everything in the world from my home.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. So out there in Abu Dhabi land, Sam.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Nukabauer. I'm here in Abu Dhabi, but I am originally from Philadelphia, and I'm really excited to talk about poetry today. I was sad to hear that Evan Boland died today.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so I think that today is the right kind of day to read some poems. And I'm here with Marion.
Hi, who's just now hearing that Evan Boland died.
Yeah, listen.
Oh, I'm so sorry, yeah.
I was going to mention that, and I was going to ask you, Marion, to put a link to her poem, Quarantine.
You got it.
On this episode. It's very interesting. And, when I was in Ireland, she actually came to the University of Cork and read that poem. Yeah. But yeah, let's link to that poem.
She's very imposing.
Lovely lady.
I mean, she was just sort of this statuesque quality, right? She was just this sort of force.
Yeah, and been so sweet and kind. And I only met her once, but she was so not acting like she was anything special. Do you know what I mean? Just very warm and engaging and lovely.
Oh, but such a such a special voice, right? So right. we will link, and light to Evan Boland. All right, so I'm going to do something that's a bit of a non sequitur. And Slushies, you can't really see this because it's a video effect. So Jason, this is for you. Note the sort of basic green T-shirt that I'm wearing. That nonetheless.
Oh wow!
Fringe,
I would have worn
color.
my fringe if I had known that we were wearing if we were doing a fringe-isode.
Fringe-isode.
I would have worn my, although because the sweater I have with like the 2-foot fringe, that gets caught in stuff, but it's also easier to pull back. But the one with the 6-inch fringe, like, it's sort of in some ways more manageable, but much harder to eat in.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say you get stuck in stuff, because twice today, passing from room to room, the fringe on the arm got stuck to a doorknob.
Yeah, no, it's a hazard. It's like you really it's like platform shoes.
It takes a certain skill and talent and practice. But yeah, I have a T-shirt on with about foot-long fringe off the back that is in honor of Jason's wonderful leather jacket.
I have
many photos.
I have a significant number.
Yes, I was going to say, Sam, we need her to turn around again and take a photo of the screen, right? To see that fringe.
Although I have to say, after Tiger King, I was like, maybe I should stop wearing fringe.
Oh, please. Own it. All right.
Although I'm not going to dye my mullet.
That might.
You should go for a mullet, Jason, now.
It's going to happen.
During these times.
I am insisting that headbands are the answer. I know that many of my compatriots in quarantine are going for the head shaving moment, and I am insisting headbands and scarves until the salons reopen and it's safe.
I'm planning to rock a little Edie look in the next week or so. I've got foot-long roots here.
It really is the best outfit for the day. It's so I can't do it, but I love her voice. We'll find a clip of her saying that.
Yes, right, we will. All right, so Grey Gardens on a gray day here in Abu Dhabi, right? It's extraordinary to have clouds in the sky, and it's sort of moody and wonderful, and maybe that's a transition into talking about poems as opposed to my 2-foot fringe. So today we have a handful of poems by the poet Kailey Tedesco. I don't know if it's Kailey or Kylie. So
I would have said Kailey, but
Kailey?
What do I know?
All right. Well, Kailey, I hope we're not butchering your name, but we have poems that are up for discussion here. And who would like to read the first one? And it's called Number 7, Adulthood.
I'll do that one. Whoops.
I was gonna volunteer Alex, but you should totally take it.
Oh, I want to read the next one.
Okay.
Oh, good, Alex. You know why I want to read this one? Because it says number 7, and it's my own inside joke to myself.
Okay.
You remember the number 7 thing? Okay. So, all right. So this is Kailey Tedesco, number 7, Adulthood, after Hilma of Klint. You'll remember me as a zygote, scrambling towards cronehood on its haunches. I grow bloomwards, my teeth outstretched on the front lawn during the violet hour, spelling spells disguised as poems. Hermit to hermit, we kiss, to form a single nautilus, sistering divinity. Tell me, when was it you last heard from your spirit? My guides have abducted me quite violently from the tulips I found myself asleep in. It is all but true. My eggs have clasped in my womb like pearls. My intention is not to create life, but death, though I misspoke. My true intention is to create life out of death. Find me in the portal on the left, right next to the electric fences of my darknesses, all clumped.
Nicely read.
Wonderful reading. Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't realize the other connection I had to this poem, which is the bed of tulips.
Oh, yeah.
My virtual background today is tulips. I wonder if I did that subconsciously.
And then I have my virtual background, the Hilma of Klint. I found.
Oh, you
very
succeeded.
Quickly.
I was trying and I couldn't get it done.
Nice. Well, Slushies, if you're like me, I actually had to look up Hilma of Klint, and I'm a little bit embarrassed because the art is amazing. So we will make sure to include a link to some of those images, especially the one behind Alex's head.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the show at the Guggenheim. There was this show at the Guggenheim of Hilma af Klint's work that was just this game changer because she didn't allow any of her work to be exhibited for something like 100 years after her death. Or, we had just reached the mark. And in looking at her work, there was all of this. She had been doing all of these things with abstraction, with color, with sort of all of the trends that sort of defined 20th century art. Like she had been doing in the very, very early, like 19 teens, in this kind of theosophical way with all of this kind of mysticism. And so the work was like, it was like Klimt was there. It was like, Mondrian and, like all these giants of 20th century art. You just like walked through this gallery being like, oh my God, like she had done all this work. And because she felt that she wouldn't be taken seriously as a woman, and because she sort of had all these mystical guides, she had sort of held all of this stuff back. And so going through the gallery, it was like Albers. It was like, it was just unbelievable. And it really kind of changed the way a lot of people thought about 20th century art. Because this kind of, obscure, up to that moment, obscure woman artist who was deeply involved in this kind of process-based mysticism had produced this just fantastic body of work that no one had seen for, close to a century.
Oh my God, I'm so glad to know about it, right? Like, honestly, like that's one of the things in reading for PBQ that my education gets like the gaps get highlighted and then filled in ways like I didn't even know, right? So it's just a radical joy to learn about this stuff. So thank you.
I saw the show a number of times. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Great. So how about the poem?
Yeah, let's remind our readers while everybody's still thinking about it. If you'd like to see this poem on the page, it's long and skinny. Some of those lines are one word. And just go to pbqmag.org and the poems themselves will be there for you to peruse.
So I remember the first time I read this, I thought I was reading a magic spell. So I'm so glad to learn of the mysticism attached to the artist that's being invoked with the poem. Because it really did feel like some sort of incantation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it's interesting because I wouldn't have thought of Hilma af Klint without the notation in the poem, but sort of knowing that this is kind of picking up from her mysticism, it all kind of fits in this really nice way. That there's sort of all of these different levels of the zygote to crone, the sort of the life cycle, the embedded in this, being embedded in these spheres, kind of receiving these voices, receiving these kind of I paid much more attention to the art than I paid to the wall text. I don't, and a lot of I'm not that, I'm kind of anti-mystic. Like, I don't really like mysticism. Like, I'm sort of like astrology and, all that kind of stuff. I want to like punch people.
But I'm a total Leo, Jason. No, I'm kidding.
I know. You're lucky you're far away. You're lucky you're in your own studio. But knowing that this poem is about that, I thought it worked really beautifully, and then it kind of fit into what Klint was doing, and kind of having this sense of the expansive, mystic, cyclical, the sort of the fractal quality of nature that, we kiss to form a single nautilus, that all of the shapes of nature and mathematics and spirituality are just kind of like these endlessly embedded sets of forms. I thought was really beautiful.
I really like the part, my intention is not to create life, but death. Though I misspoke, my true intention is to create life out of death. And I forget who said it, but there was a line I read once that was like, don't make your life your life's work. And I kind of think about that when I'm reading this, because I'm thinking about also like the history of her, like not wanting to be publicized when she was alive, like Jason had said, and thinking how different that is to like the here and now, and how like this delayed kind of gratification, if you believe kind of like that you go on and there's an afterlife or mystical things and different purposes, that there is even that possibility of gratification later on. It's just such a stark contrast to right now. And I think for that reason alone, even, it's such a satisfying poem. But like there are so many other things that I really like about it. And I also really like my eggs have clasped in my womb and like pearls. And to think again of that, like that delayed kind of idea maybe of motherhood, of giving birth to her body of work. It's just gorgeous. And I think the form itself also has some delayed gratification because the lines are so short. When you're reading it, it takes longer to read, even though it's actually not that long of a poem in some ways.
I would have liked a longer line in capital letters. But, well.
Right. So that's part of this strategy, I think, in the poem, or that the poet is using too, right? So it's the short line in this poem, but the lack of capital letters, but inclusion of grammar. So it's this like really ambivalent, I think, approach to punctuation in that sense. Right. Which, and again, as I said, it felt like an incantation when she's basically like calling that out, my teeth outstretched on the front lawn during the violet hour. And I don't really understand what that means, but I'm in, right? Spelling spells disguised as poems, hermit to hermit, right? And then it goes from there to the sort of like doubling. And then this kind of like vampiric move, right? With that section that Sam was talking about, right? The life out of death, life not death, right? And for me, like the resonance was to, oh God, is it Coleridge, right?
Coleridge?
The rhyme, yeah, is it the rhyme name Mariner?
Life and
right?
death and death and life? Yeah, rhyme name.
The nightmare, life and death, like the boat that passes, right? The Mariner. So like it's like full of these like seriously ambivalent images of both birth and fecundity, and also, right, darknesses and
right, because she's scrambling towards crownhood, right in the beginning.
Yeah.
So I felt like the format made me go really slow. If these were longer lines, it would have been over too fast. And I think that really helps. I wanted to speak to Jason saying how he's not a fan of like mystical woo-woo kind of stuff. I am, and I'm only getting more so on the daily. And so the exact things that draw me in would normally push Jason out. And I say that fact alone, that Jason still dug it, despite what we know is his huge vitriol, just raw. Like we've had battles on the air, let alone in real life, about things that cannot be proven by science.
If it's not falsifiable, can't count on it.
So to me, I think the conversation's over because of
we're all on board with this.
Yeah. I liked how much it made me slow down. Can I just say that alone?
Yeah. What appealed to me was the word choice. I'm somebody I wouldn't consider myself a poet. I'm more into prose, I guess. But when I'm reading poetry, I respond to sounds and like just interesting word choices. But sometimes poets can go like I'm going to go real interesting, but then lose the reader. And I feel like Kailey doesn't. Like, I'm still surprised by the word choice. Like, I love Bloomwards just as a word. But I'm still get, like, at the very least, a sensation of what she's trying to communicate. Like, kind of, I feel like the speaker of this poem is, like, kind of telling somebody else, like, here's my understanding of the world. And I just, like, I felt it before I kind of fully understood it reading the poem.
Yeah.
And to foreshadow, I feel that through the other poems too. You get the sensation, but you can also, like, read it and figure it out. So it's the surprise of a poem, but still, like, the emotional connection. That it's a hard balance, but I think they do it.
Well said, Alex.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I really like the way you said she's telling us how she thinks about life. You know?
Yeah. So I have one question though for the gang before we do move towards a vote, because I think we're ready. So the title of the piece is Number 7, Adulthood. And I don't know Hilma of Klint well enough to know if that's an actual piece of hers, which would then make this an ekphrastic, right? And I just don't know enough, right? But I will say, like, it's one of those moments as an editor where I'm like, I'm ready to vote on this because I actually want to do the research. And if I find out that that is one of her pieces, I'm going to love this more. If I find out that it's not going to destabilize my reading, I don't think. But I don't know. What do you guys feel about that? Like, do you know enough? Is Number 7 actually a poem? I mean, a piece? Alex?
I found something as you were talking. I think it is a piece.
It is a piece, yeah. It's on the Guggenheim. I actually thought that it was her series. I thought that this was like one of the I thought this was Kailey's Number 7 and like her sequence. It is actually a Klint piece. And you can look it up. It's on the Guggenheim website, group for the 10 largest Number 7 adulthood.
All right.
And what she's describing is in the picture.
Fascinating.
But abstractly. Yeah. So maybe we can link to the Guggenheim and people can see, or our Slushies can see exactly the painting. Although actually I like it better without the painting. Like when I look at the painting and I try to sort of fit what Kailey's doing to it, I'm a little less happy. I kind of like the poem better by itself before I looked at the image.
I think Marion said it too, though. I didn't need it. Like sometimes I think I'm the one who always goes, okay, are you engaged enough in the poem that you want to go look that up? I just don't need to look that up. And I think we're all saying that. So that, again, I can point to the strength of the piece itself. So we don't need to. We might eventually, but we don't need to in order to appreciate it. Right?
Yeah.
All right, that's such an interesting response to the project, right? If it is meant to be an ekphrastic poem, right? But we don't really, it's not, all we know is what we got on the page, frankly. So I think we should be...
Right. Okay. Let's do
What were you going to say, Kath? What were you going to say?
I was only going to say it could inspire her and not really be ekphrastic at the same time. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be her immersion in the poem or anything, in the painting or anything like that. It could just be... It can inspire her, prompt her to write this, even if it's not about the painting, right?
Right.
So, anyway, but let's vote.
Vote.
Okay.
Slushie, I think we should flip thumbs since we're all looking at each other.
Okay, we're all looking. Yeah.
You stole my words right from me. It's so nice to see everybody's faces. Let's see our actual thumbs. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and go. All right.
Oh, yeah. I was kind of tilting towards that anyway.
The votes are secret, Alex.
Yeah, Alex, it's a secret vote.
How would he know?
I said tilting towards that. I caught myself.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. You know why I said it? Marion sometimes, for some reason, gets flipped out that we throw thumbs this way because she was used to sending little text messages to Joe Zhang, our sound engineer. So sometimes, and that's why I did say, let's just do the thumbs, right?
Yeah. I know.
I like that we're leaving our cameras on and I can see you.
Yeah. So we should also explain about the tilty thumbs. that in actual editorial meetings, while there is the thumbs up and the thumbs down, which are clearly self-explanatory, there's also thumb sideways, where we need to like keep going, we need to keep talking, or as sometimes referred to as a maybe, but I always see it as we need to keep talking. But introduced even into that is thumbs like at northeast, where it's like a maybe tilting
degrees,
yes,
angles,
like a southeast, like, and so over time, we've had we need a protractor to like measure where your thumb is, but we try to encourage people to stick to the thumbs up and the thumbs down because these are the least ambiguous of our.
Yeah, I famously was very strict of maybes.
Yeah.
Well,
our thumbs can go in a lot of places.
All right, let me just jump in because if Kailey listens to this, she's got to know it's a yes, it's in. I don't think we actually said that.
We did.
Yeah. And it was nearly unanimous except for thumb directions.
There might have been a need for further conversation, but I think we've landed on that.
I think we've covered the ground.
I'm thinking, we talk about this being important to share our democratic editorial policy, and just to remind everybody, we're exemplifying it for you right now. We have Abu Dhabi in the room. We have New York in the room. I'm actually the only Philly representative. Come to think of it, I didn't even realize it.
Wow.
So we have these 3 cities, and I think there are very often at meetings where somebody throws a sideways thumb. I go, get out of town. You go up or down right now. I will not allow middle thumb. Maybe if it was planted northeast, I'm counting you as a yes. Like, let's go, right? I make folks commit, right? But at meetings, I think they are always very organic, and each city might run them like with little different tweaks on all of those thumb rules. I mean, we have the infamous ASO meter in New York, and
we don't need to talk about that. We'll just let that that's a shameful secret that we don't need. That's been gone for 15 years.
At one point, we were talking about everybody getting like a popsicle stick, and once a meeting, you were allowed to just throw your popsicle stick in, which meant that you didn't want to hear that poem anymore. The conversation must end.
Like a gong? You could gong.
Stick, a reverse talking stick.
Shutting up stick. You can't talk anymore. I have the shutting up stick.
Shutting up popsicle stick.
That Zoom protocol right there, right? I've been thinking a lot about how conversations are shifting and changing, like the decorum of Zoom conversation. You definitely need a shut up stick, but not for that. So
well, when you're the host, you can't mute others. You can mute individuals. But not, it's probably good that Joe is the one, Zhang is the one who sets this up for us, because none of us can jump in there and mute each other. And he's not here today. Might jump in later, but just so the Slushies know, we're actually rogue recorders right now. Anything could happen. And we don't have our sound engineer to control us in any way. Can I just keep the mic for one? Let's do another. I just have to say something else. I sometimes, when I'm in the studio, I'm just sitting at a table with whoever else might be in the studio, right? And I might have my phone forward because sometimes Jason or Marion or Sam might text or something, but I never have a computer. When people go off and research things, I'm like, oh, no, stay in the poem, right? But I broke my own rule right now, and just for fun, just because we can, or I can today, I sent Kailey an email and said, we're recording your podcast right now. How do you pronounce your name?
Oh, good.
And she said, it's Kailey. And
hey.
So I thought that was pretty funny, that in real time I got her pronunciation, which I never would have done if we were in the studio.
I love this. Wonderful.
Do you remember when our meetings used to end with like stuffing envelopes and then finding the nearest mailbox?
Wow.
Yes.
And now there might not be a
absolutely
right. I mean, a long time ago, we used to stuff all of the envelopes with our responses, and then we would go and find the nearest mailbox.
While talking, right? Or like even, I remember going through rejections and while talking stuffing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Samantha, Alex, this was in the day of something called a SAISY. Self-addressed stamped envelope, old school. All right, let's move on to the next poem. I'm sure Kailey is excited to hear us discuss the next one, which is called Inside the Beheaded Apartment. And I volunteer Alex, who's already indicated.
I wanted to.
You're not volunteering him anything.
A gentle leader, gentle.
All right.
Oh, you, Alex.
Inside the beheaded apartment, the sky whispers something Eggsome, then breaks its rain, thick and frozen. I crave the cigarettes I've never smoked, not Marlboro. I picture you before the time everything could kill you. Glamour in your beehive and twiggy dress, smoke haloing the mini chandeliers. I beckon for you to gemstone through me, Egyptology. My lipstick glyphs on the edges of your sink. There are teeth in the walls. Did you know that? Whole fangs pulled clean at the root, and toenails too, flaking from the ceiling. I lived with the estate sale busts of Nefertiti, estate sale Victorian lace, bagged and labeled with the year, estate sale chases of green velvet, green because it reminds me of France, where I've never been, but where the sun is a vintage wallpaper. In the window across the way, women in mourning bonnets have St. Columbia hands holding tight to the dogs and their rosary chains. The plexiglass cracks in the shape of a crown or a witch hat. There is no bathroom but the one with the freckled clawfoot. The cats have become anxious with the roach scroll of the floorboards. We say they perform theatrical productions. One Ophelia, lounging in wet lavender, sogging the carpet shag. One Desdemona, clawing at the tissue for handkerchiefs. Something is crawling in me, the teeth in the walls of boning. I wear the whole house that used to be yours like a corset. This place is no good for us, I tell your lack of existence. All the bodily fluids of every other tenant filth me. All the living hosts whispering in tune with the mold waterlogging my pillows. Bring me my peacock and she-bear, my estate sale saints. It is time I sick them on my landlords and bring back your sight and my seeing. I shall go ahead and make my own kingdom out of deadbolts.
Great reading.
Thank you.
I shall make my own kingdom out of deadbolts.
Should we fetch the bolt cutters or no one? Fetch the bolt cutters?
Amazing.
I thought that album was I'm the only person who doesn't like that album in the world. Everyone else loves that album.
Wow. All right, Jason, that's some fighting words. John is a huge Fiona Apple fan. He sit down and listen to it like first to last, drinking a glass of wine and marveling at her genius.
Everyone else seems to be. I'm an outlier on this one. But back to Kailey.
Yes.
Not to steal her thunder. Yeah.
So I was hooked on this poem from Eggsome, which is I may not be my Long Island accent's coming out, so that's Eggsome, not an oil company or anything. Eggsome.
I absolutely love the line, I wear the whole house that used to be yours like a corset. And I think like so often, particularly in America where you hear about like storage units and everyone has so much stuff. And I think like one of the first things that I realized when I started traveling a lot, when I was younger, I went to China for a month for a research project in grad school. And in the different homes I stayed in, there were so few belongings, even though there was like an upper middle class family considerably. And I think a lot about kind of the freedom of that, like not having a lot of things and like the idea that like having a lot of things, it's like a corset. It does like tie you to something. But it's like sold to you like something good, like something that will make you like more desirable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just the use of the language is so amazing, and the sort of the coinages and just the phrasing is so lilting. The sky whispers something eggsome, then breaks its rain, thick and frozen. Like the sort of the rhythms are just so Wonderful. And it's hard to get that, particularly with like an American accent. The difference between the stressed and the unstressed syllables often gets really flattened for Americans. And with this one, the sky whispers something eggsome, then breaks its rain, thick and frozen. Like you really hear that rhythm so powerfully.
We're all quoting that first line. That is just a hell of a first line, right? Yeah. And what I think that I feel like this is done throughout, is that's heavy and very descriptive and I don't know, literary. It's poetic, right? And then the next line is, I crave the cigarettes I've never smoked. I love that juxtaposition, that it became so real and visceral and simple, such simple language. I crave cigarettes, right? And I feel like she does that several times. This very lofty, rich, dense description, and then something more direct.
Well, and those rhythms are estate sale chases of green velvet. Bring me my peacock and she bear. Like,
my estate sale saints.
My estate
I love that.
Saints.
That's what it might be. Bring me my peacock and she bear. My estate sale saints.
Yes.
Love it.
So I want to say too how different this poem is from the first one. And I know we try not to compare poems in a batch, but you can almost hear it in the way we're reading the lines. If you look at this poem in the show notes, these lines are epically long, right? And they're 2-line stanzas until the single line, last line of the poem, right? And to go back to Jason's point, and also like I think what makes this so delicious is like a sort of guttural quality to the first couple of lines that sort of stays in, like the poem. It sort of it keeps you in a kind of, you're hung back in the reading, right? The sky whispers something, eggsome, breaks its green. Thinking I crave cigarettes, right? And now you've got that guttural, right? Repeating, not Marlboro. I picture the time before everything could kill you, glamour, line break, stanza break in your beehive and twiggy dress, right? And so that G sound gets picked up from the first stanza and then pulled in, right, into the second one. I beckon for you to gemstone through me, Egyptology. The fuck? Like quick glyphs on the edges of your sink. That is so subtle, and it's like a freaking tapestry, the way she's got that sound stitched in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Super interesting. I have to say, the section that Samantha pointed to, right, it took me a minute because I have the mind of a frat boy. On the boning, where did that go? Yeah. So, right. So Wanophilia lounging in wet lavender, sogging the carpet shag. And again, with those G's, right? One Desdemona clawing at tissue for handkerchief. Something is crawling in me, teeth in the walls of boning. And I'm like, what? What is that? Right. And then it's answered. I wear the whole house that used to be yours like a corset. And now corset gives you the bone back, right? As the structure of the house, which is so great, right? Like it gives you the sort of architectural structure of the room, not just in addition to the emotional structure. Go ahead. Sorry, Kath.
I'm so sorry.
That's right.
It called back to me that third stanza, teeth in the walls, whole fangs, pulled clean at the root, and toenails too. Somehow that just called that back to me, like all of that bony stuff.
Right.
Oh, just to piggyback off the G sound that you mentioned, Marion, I highlighted all the ings in the poem, and it's like a bunch of present participle. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's a present participle.
Yeah, all the verb tenses, like we're in it, like we're constantly in it, and I think I just realized that like this very fruitful poem, like I was captivated by the evocative sounds and images, but I'm finding new ways that the author has like constructed this poem just to be amazing. So just wanted to jump in there with that.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused about like the teeth in the beginning, though. I do think it works really well in the stanza that Marion mentioned, but I get a little twisted with did you know there are teeth in the walls? And I don't know if I'm missing something about what that could kind of mean or what that feels like, because the other things both like sound really great to me and also provide, I think, some narration too for me. But I don't know about the teeth. Why are there teeth everywhere?
Right. And so the title of the poem, again, is called Inside the Beheaded Apartment, right? Which is just an interesting image, right? And I don't know why I feel like I want to mention this, but I just happened to have read A.M. Forster, Howard's End, and there's a witch elm that figures in that novel, and there's teeth in the witch elm, which is like tied to this older pagan belief that like if you put teeth in the tree and the teeth grow with the tree, if you eat a piece of the bark and have any kind of dental issues, the bark will help you, right? Like it's a remedy, right? Now, I don't know if that has anything to do with this, but it's the same sort of like mystic, creepy, like almost like genre level horror aspect, right? That seems to be creeping into the poem in as much as it's a description. So I don't know. It is a creepy image.
I just got that last part, Mare. For me, it was just a haunting. It's a bad space, So teeth in the wall was a horror image to me. Just another thing to be frightened of or have in your imagination even. Like, this place is so toxic that there could be teeth in the walls.
Mm-hmm.
How it feels, right?
Yeah. Well, I interpret it kind of two ways, where the fangs were kind of keeping the person inside, like you get snagged on like a teeth, but also teeth are like toenails, or well, not, you don't lose toenails, but you clip them, hopefully. Like there's things you lose and get maybe not collected around the house. So I think it's kind of a weird, maybe liminal space of that idea, but also this I don't know, visual space that the author's creating. So that's my interpretation of it.
Well, I like the way the sort of the imagery of the past, I mean, there's a long stretch of time between Egyptology and Desdemona and Ophelia. And so like the way in which just sort of the weight of a past sort of like keeps coming in through the images, that like it's sort of the being dragged down by the weights of histories, and those histories being in objects, the Victorian lace, the imagery of the Shakespearean heroine, the peacock and she bear, that it has this kind of, and like, I can imagine another poem where I'd be like, pick one, right? Like, are you talking about the Victorian era? Are you talking about the Renaissance? Are you talking about ancient Egypt? But here, I think they work really well together, that they kind of have this antiquarian heaviness that sort of, as you were talking about with the house as the corset, and then with the structures of the language that, kind of have all of these new coinages that at the same time kind of feel like they're pulling you down and pulling you back. I thought it all worked really well together.
Excellent.
Are we sound ready? Are we like, is that the silence of like...
Right. Is it the silence of contemplation or the silence of judgment? Right. I suspect
is it the silence of consensus?
It might be. Right?
Only one way to find out.
I think we're at least in consensus that we should vote.
Yeah. I think so. I'm going
to join Marion in her...
Okay, it's warming up her thumbs over there. I'll do the same. We should do this.
Right? Here we go.
The hand
videos to move here in my home. Tybo.
Like, seriously, I think voting is the most exercise I've gotten all day. So, Kathy, right? On 3, 1, 2, 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yay! All right.
Wow, unanimous.
2 for 2 thus far. Nice. So it is 10-6. And I think we have a big decision to make. Again, we have another poem by Kailey, but we don't have a lot of time to discuss it. So would you like to take on this poem now, or would you like to move the discussion elsewhere?
We didn't start on time. So I think we're closer to 40 minutes of an episode right now.
So, but I just want to check in with everybody else in daylight hours. Eastern Standard Time daylight hours. Can you hang on for that another
Absolutely.
time? Wonderful.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's take a look at the third poem. Who would like to read this one? It's called Bloody Mary times 3.
We can never see faces and Sam is saying no. Sorry to out you, Sam. That was just so cute. She's just like very quietly.
It's very loud, so I have to keep muting myself. It's been a long day of Zooming, so.
Okay, I'll jump in there. I'll take care of it.
Thanks, Jason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bloody Mary times 3. There goes my top skull jack in the boxing from your Susie Talks a Lot eyelids. Maybe I've been dead a long time. Maybe I've been dead never ever. Live with me forever in the medicine cabinet where my limbs smoke ring dollwards through your own reflection. Spinning my head all the way around is what I do for a pageant talent. Every time you call my name, you put a knife in it. My face wounds towards yours. I've become nothing but a blood aura on your tooth fairy bedding. Unlike yours, my wedding gown will lack knuckle buttons and I envy. You should have made me more opulent in the story where I'm Saint Corpsed with gumball rings on every finger. Let me live display cased at the Dead Mall, cradling the body you've made us. I'll hold you too, if you'd like. We can lace together, spine glued to spine, a jar of our parts now puzzled. Then my head, free by comparison, can decapitate and become a locket facing the wrong way. The backstage of night is what I'd like to see most. Everything zombifying from the dirt of sky. I see the same stars as you. There goes my head. I'm coming back to life.
Nice reading.
Thank you.
Okay, so Bloody Mary. What was the story again? You got to look in the mirror.
If you look in the mirror and you say Bloody Mary 3 times, she appears. And I don't know, is it Mary Tudor? Like, who is Bloody Mary? Is it Mary Queen of Scots? It must be Mary Queen of Scots.
Growing up Catholic, I always thought it was going to be the Virgin Mary. So I was scared to death. Like some kind of horror version of the Virgin Mary.
Virgin Mary.
Yeah. Wow. And But I love all of the hearkening back to childhood images. The Jack in the Box, the Susie Talks a Lot eyelids. What a brilliant first line again. The gumball rings on every finger. All the way around is spinning my head all the way around is what I do for a pageant talent. I was like, gorgeous. Shut the front door, right?
Yeah.
And somehow this reminds me, I think you guys will feel it too. It reminds me in the best way of Marge Piercy's Barbie doll.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Slushies again, take a look at this one. It's a little more like the other one because it's long lines, but we do have a little more play with spacing toward the end. And it's set in couplets with, again, a final line, but there's more play with space. You've got to see it to believe it.
So it's so funny you brought up Marge Piercy. I hadn't actually thought of that connection, but that's awesome. And because for me, it sort of stayed in that, creepy horror story moment of Bloody Mary, right? And it made me think of Carmen Maria Machado's book, Her Body and Other Parties. If you've had a chance to read it, Slushies, I would love to discuss it with you. And if you haven't had a chance to read it, Slushies, buy that damn book. It's an amazing series of short stories that are working in a sort of feminist horror genre that I had no idea was as extraordinary as it is. So when I came to this poem, I thought, holy crap, I'm actually still drawn into, right, the sort of creepy storytelling horror story, right? Like genre, plus, as Kathy said, this like little kids torturing each other with scary stories moment, right? That gets reproduced in this piece.
Right. And I do feel there's a little bit of a feminist thing there too. Let me live, display cased at the dead mall, cradling the body you've made us.
I think about like why we kind of want to evoke like evil spirits, right? I mean, for me, like the Ouija board or something had a clear purpose, like, does he like me? But I feel like the Bloody Mary, when I played with that as a child, was really about darkness, right? Like Bloody Mary was going to come and do like really terrible, cruel things to you or your friends possibly. And I think about this poem and kind of just like young women, like desire for death, right? And why like that kind of just continues through the ages, why we all have these kind of stories, and why I'm initially kind of attracted to this poem, the title, even before I read it. Yet I also like feel some kind of shame about that too. And I wonder why. And I think I feel that as I get older, even about like someone like Sylvia Plath or something, like there's a little bit of like, she's so brilliant, but also there's something like a little shameful sometimes about being older and continuing to like read and want to like read about like kind of death, I think. So I really love this, the idea that like not just the kind of poetic eye like in this poem, but like this idea of this like desire for F like continuing to come back. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this poem.
Well said.
Jason, yeah. Alex.
Well, it ramps up the linguistic tension of the other poems. I mean, the Jack in the Box from Your Susie Talks a Lot eyelids, where I'm Saint corpsed with gumball rings on every finger. Like it really, I'm live. Let me live, display cased at the dead mall. This one I think has the pushback against the grain of syntax is even more pronounced in this poem. That kind of what this poem is doing in terms of kind of taking syntax apart and then putting it back together to kind of reveal the seams, I think it intensifies in this poem. I mean, I think that, we try not to read people against their own work, but in this one you can really see the sutures as the adjectives are kind of being pushed together, and the syntax is really being, put under all kinds of stress and torsion. It's intense. Well done.
I love the word suture, right? Like what a great way to describe the fit on that. And Slushies, it's true. Like we really tried not to read the poems against each other, but now I'm thinking like, as an editor and publisher, like what's this going to look like on the website? How do these three poems sit together? What would they look like in the book? You know what I mean? And how they actually gain by proximity to each other. And you can begin to see, not just the poet's preoccupations in individual poems, but across them seems to really intensify that sort of like feminist, it's funny. I keep coming back to that word ekphrastic, right? Like it's this thing that she does with an artist in the first is also this thing that she's doing with a fairy tale, right? Or a myth in the second, right? Like sort of inhabiting some other text that's in the world as a way of triggering her own like creative project, which is just fascinating to watch.
I'm so glad we discussed this one. I really wanted to hear what everybody had to say as well.
So I don't know if it's appropriate to tell a little backstory on this poem, but maybe we should vote first and then I'll tell the story.
Okay.
How about that? Ready, vote?
Ready, vote.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, vote.
Yahoo! All right, it's in. Well done, Kailey. A 3 for 3. Oh, well, that's great because the title of this poem is Bloody Mary times 3. So I want to tell this story, and I don't feel like I'm certain I'm not betraying any confidences here, but it's a sort of publishing side of this, which is, one of our editors here in Abu Dhabi, Amna, found this in the slush pile and called it to our attention, and we were like, oh man, this would be really great to discuss on air. And by the time we reached out to request the 3 poems that were in the pile, one of them was already taken, right? And we were like, oh, that kind of sucks, but the others are really good too, so let's continue to discuss them. And at the last minute, I asked Kailey, could you send us another one just to replace, if you're interested, if you've got more, whatever. And so Bloody Mary times 3 just came to us yesterday for consideration. So it's funny how the world works, right? Like what you think you lost out on actually comes back to you in abundance. So
there are moments where I'm reading it and thinking, it's my favorite, but then when I look back at the others, I go, oh, no, that was my favorite. Oh, no, that was my favorite. I really did it of these 3.
So funny. So thank you, Kailey Tedesco. And I think, does anybody have any sort of important announcements or things that they're loving right now? I think Kathy might.
So I'm sure our slushies were wondering why they heard different music for the first time in 3 years. Well, this is another new thing that I'm super excited about, and we all are. That is an audio clip from A.M. Mills, a artist out of Wilbur Records. And there were a lot of reasons to pick a lot of different choices from Wilbur Records. But I think that, being honest, I might have chosen this one mostly because the title is Spaghetti by Lorraine. Isn't that a great title? Spaghetti by Lorraine. It's a poem challenge. Now everybody write a poem called Spaghetti with Lorraine. So that new record, Angel Eyes, is available everywhere you buy and download your records. And we're really excited to share it.